Okay, so it's come to that time where I'm thinking about I'm going to have to upgrade the system that I use for video rendering. This is mostly used for rendering teaching materials, so it's not doesn't need to be massively specialist, but it's currently based around an old AMD 8350, and this is the benchmark on that, which is pretty slow. So that's the single core performance and then general pass mark score. So I've got a few options. This system has 32 gigs of RAM, which is a reasonable amount of memory. So I could perhaps upgrade using DDR3 memory, which is what it uses. And that would mean getting something like an i7-4790K, which I think is pretty much the fastest CPU available that will work with DDR3 memory, or at least sort of widely available. I think there are a couple of other options, but pretty hard to get hold of. And then I could maybe get a second-hand motherboard that would take that chip. So something like, so here's the 4790K. This one's currently going for 142, but normally they go for about 200 on eBay, something like that. And then something like this motherboard, which they vary in what they end up going for. So it has the necessary number of memory slots, and it's got an I/O shield, but as you can see it doesn't look like it's in the best condition. It's pretty dusty. So going down the kind of eBay route's not without its risks, but that would give me a single core performance of 2400, 2500 basically, which isn't too bad. But the total cost is about 320 quid, sort of an estimate as well. The other options go for things like something like the Ryzen 5 3600X, which is obviously a much more powerful CPU. Its single core performance isn't that much higher, but it obviously has much more processing cores, so that's an advantage. And something with a sort of suitable kind of mid-ranged motherboard and some new DDR4 RAM, and then a similar water block, because my current system's water cooled. And you're looking at sort of 550. So you can kind of see there's a price from a well-known supplier for the 3600X, which is sort of £210 basically. It's not too bad. So another option is a kind of mixed new old Ryzen system. So I could go for something like the second generation Ryzen 7 2700X. And they go on eBay for roughly around £200, again, slightly less sometimes. Could get a cheaper motherboard, that would be new, and then I've seen 32 gigs of DDR4 memory on eBay for about £100. Same water block. This water block is compatible with all modern CPU sockets. And that you're looking at about 400 and sort of, well, about 400-ish pounds. So it's a bit of a saving. The problem with this chip is that the single core performance isn't that amazing. It's slightly lower than the old i7 and significantly lower than the Ryzen 5, which isn't amazing. So yeah, it's maybe not the best option. That board looks pretty decent. So it's £81 basically. Has 4 memory slots, which is pretty important for me. Either for future upgradability or for getting that 32 gig, and then it has ample SATA ports and graphics connectivity, so that'll be fine for that. The other option that I noticed was a newer chip. Oh yeah, and that one's about 430, which isn't too bad, assuming that you go for second-hand memory. This is another option that I sort of noticed appeared. So that's actually slightly wrong. So that bit, don't know that for sure. But there's this Ryzen 3 3300X that's appeared, and it is down here. And it's the Zen 2 core, and it's 4 cores, 8 threads, 3.8 gigahertz rather. So it's pretty similar to the 3600X, although it doesn't quite turbo as high. It's not on the Passmark site yet, but it's going to be somewhere in the region of this, slightly lower probably, because it's very similar clocked, but less cores obviously. So that combined with that relatively cheap AM4 socket motherboard, and then perhaps some second-hand memory, and then the water block, and you're looking at 335, which is not that far from this estimated eBay system in many respects. So I think that's probably what I'm going to end up going with, something like this, maybe with new memory. I'll have to decide that later, because it seems to offer the best value for money. And it'll be a pretty decent improvement over what I've currently got. That chip looks like a pretty good buy, really, because, yeah, it's 4 cores or 8 threads instead of 6 cores, 12 threads. Is that going to make a huge difference to my rendering performance? It'll make a bit of difference, but it won't be enormous. But it'll still be a massive upgrade over what I've currently got. Yeah, so what would you do when you're thinking about trying to upgrade a system without spending too much money? What's your strategy? Or do you just save up a bit more and go for something that's a bit more future-proof maybe? Perhaps it's worth spending the extra 75 quid to get a 3600X. But yeah, let me know your thoughts.